So, hi, good evening, guys. Welcome to another Landscape Lenscast podcast. We're here tonight with another guest, of course, whose images will leave you in awe. And really, of course, Shona Perkins is the lady who's on tonight. Is best known for her stunning ICM images, of course, and her for her displays on. Or actually, she's founded the page for Beautiful Scotland. That's another thing I want to add in there. And Sean, of course, lives in Edinburgh and offers workshops in photography, doing ICM, and also specialises in seascapes and, of course, ICM photography. So, just to, of course, want to welcome Shona to coming on to the podcast. And, of course, Shona, just want to say thank you for taking your time out this evening to pop onto the podcast and talk to us. How are you doing, firstly?
I'm very well. I'm very well. Thank you, Paul. And thank you very much for having me. I'm delighted to be here. And I've tuned into a couple of your podcasts because I know it's new.
Sorry.
And
Sorry.
I like it. I like it. I like that there's, a panel of you. Not that that's daunting at all. But no, really good. And I'm really, really pleased to be here.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. So we're just kind of going to go back to the beginning. One thing about podcasts, there's a cliche with the every first question, but we try to mix up and about the same. I just want to, of course, say, Shona, thanks. Now, where did, going back to pretty much where you started in photography, but going back further than that, is just give us a backdrop of your life where you started out, in regards to, your childhood and what influences you had in life and how you came into art and into photography and doing what you're doing just now, which is shooting some great landscapes and seascapes, of course.
Thank you. How to do this in a nutshell, which is always the hard part, isn't it? I suppose the best place to start is I had a corporate career. I was a regional manager for a female fashion brand. You're probably not going to know of it, but Louise, you might. I worked for Oasis, Caramillan Coast, and Warehouse before they sadly
good brands, boys. Good brands.
Yes, they were, and I worked with them for 20 odd years. And you didn't really have time for much else when I was working for them. It really was 60 to 80-hour weeks. I predominantly did most of my career up here in Scotland, and I was covering Ireland as well. So down in London once a week. So it really was a busy time for me. Back in 2017, retail was having a bit of a tricky time, and COVID obviously had a really big impact on that. But even before then, it was having quite a tricky time, and my job actually changed quite significantly, and I actually took voluntary redundancy at that point. And it was the first time I took redundancy, and it was the first time in 20 years that I actually stopped. And it wasn't until I stopped that I realised, hold on a minute, I'm actually suffering a bit of burnout here. And it was a really, really difficult time. I'm quite highly strung. I'm quite frantic. I'm quite fast. I don't sit still. And I like to be busy. And I spent my career being a bit of a workaholic. And it was really, really hard. But I suppose at that point, though, going through all of that and everything that comes with that, I vowed that I didn't want to go back into that life again. And I was only, just early 40s, and I wasn't ready to retire, and I wasn't in a position that I could retire, sadly. And I knew I needed to sort of make some changes. And I was in a position, having taken redundancy, I was in a position to take a bit of time out, and I used that time. I've always loved photography, and I've always had a camera. I grew up in the 80s and 90s before mobile phones, and
same here.
before everybody was, on social media, etc., where we actually printed our photographs and we actually, did something with our images other than digitally. So I knew I had this passion, and I found that all through my life, I travelled a lot, and I was lucky enough to travel a lot, and I took lots of photographs of my trips. And slowly it was less people and more landscape. And I realized, hold on a minute, I'm not interested in photographing people anymore. And I actually want to, seek out landscapes to photograph. So I took the time to actually really explore photography. I traveled the width and breadth of Scotland over 2 years, and did all the key locations that everybody loves to shoot. And I also enrolled with the British Academy of Photography. At that time, I really wanted to sort of, utilize the time I had. And this is very typically me. I need to be busy and doing something. And I wanted to really understand much more about the complexities of digital photography. So over that course of time, I realized, well, it became an obsession. It became absolute obsession, and any photographer can relate to that. But it also was just an opportunity to, just forget about the busyness, switch off the noise, and be away from people. Oh, that sounds awful, doesn't it?
No, not at all. Not at all.
But yeah, it was having that time where I could just actually switch off, and I don't switch off. So to find something that actually allowed me to switch off, but that was it for me, and there was just no looking back. And just to fast forward this on a little bit, after traveling Scotland, getting to know the camera in a more competent way, that sort of soon turned to long exposure photography, which I loved. I'm most at home on a beach. I'm in awe of your woodland photography. I'm very lost in a woodland. Love a beach. I'll just, give me the beach. The long exposure then sort of started turning to what will happen if I move my camera. And, long story short, really at the back end of 2018, I was starting ICM and really enjoying.
I was just going to ask you on that. How did you get into ICM? How did it start?
Well, like I said, I was really enjoying long exposure. I guess I really enjoy landscape photography and all the beautiful locations that we all go to. But I felt that I was wanting a little bit more. I felt that, I wanted something a little bit more unique for me, and that's what sort of encouraged me to start experimenting with long exposure photography. And I always get asked this question: when did you first do your first ICM? And I don't know if I can fully remember when, why, how, but I will tell you that when the very first few ICMs, I did use a tripod. Now, I always get asked, do you do handheld? Do you do tripod? I do everything handheld. But when I started, I was doing long exposure photography, and then I was just like, oh, what will happen if I just simply pan a little bit? And that's how I started. And I was really enjoying what I was being able to create with really nice conditions. But then I wanted a little bit more. So loosening the ball head of the tripod wasn't enough, and then the tripod.
Have you got some sort of go-to settings to, where you start off with your ICM photography? Whether it's 2 seconds, 5 seconds.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I guess my go-to shutter speed is probably anywhere between 0.8 seconds and 2.5 seconds. That's my ballpark. But I mean, a lot of ICM photographers shoot a lot faster than that. And I've actually been called a long exposure ICM photographer before because I like to work at slower shutter speeds.
It certainly works because your photography, certainly in it. I wonder if it works, you'd have to change it for different landscapes maybe, quick shutter speeds. Being a moving subject as well, seascapes and things like that, it certainly works anyway because your work's fantastic.
Oh, that's kind. Thank you.
They are beautiful images.
How much trial and error is involved in getting the picture you want? I'm assuming you don't just go out there and go, whap, that's the one. You know what I mean?
I wish. No, well, I don't wish actually. No, that's not true. There's a lot of trial and error, and I can spend hours, in the same position at the same scene, and that scene might just literally be sea, sand, and sky. And you know, some people come up to me, what are you photographing? Are there seals? Are there dolphins? I'm like, no, I'm just photographing this big empty beach. And yes, I can spend, it's a lot of trial and error, a lot less than they used to be for me, because, you know, practice really does help.
Working out what your failure rate, whether your failure rate is more or less than ours, chaps. And yes, Johnny, that's quite interesting, because I've attempted to, my new verb, to Shona Perkins a little bit, and it's been a bit rough at the edges, shall we say? And I think partly because I've been going sort of 0.25 to half a second, and you don't get the swooshiness that you're talking about. You just get a little bit of a stunt. And a lot of failures.
I mean, I love swooshery, and I move the camera very, very slowly, and this is what surprises people the most, especially when they come out with me. Sometimes I move it so slowly you can't even see me move it. But I like to be able to pick up detail and texture, especially in the water and the movement.
I was going to ask about that, because there's still quite a bit of definition, even though you can tell it's...
Yes. So if you're working at faster shutter speeds, then you're having to move a bit quicker.
Yes.
And you're not going to get that texture through. And for me, when that water's coming towards you and that you've got that beautiful swishery kind of texture, you want to be able to pick that up. So I find I'm moving very slowly.
So that's also going to help you retain some detail, I'm guessing, in the mountains. And think about your Harris kind of series. It's just, okay, that makes sense. Didn't think of that.
Yes, it's all about picking up contrast, colour, contrast, and form. And if you move quickly, your camera's not got the opportunity to pick it up. So you've got to kind of move slowly. So having a steady hand is everything, absolutely everything. And on a windy day, you know, it's as bad as, you know, having your tripod blown about. You know, if I'm being blown about, you know, that will really affect the image.
And what makes a good ICM?
Are you moving your camera before you press the shutter button? Or
often, often I am. I spend most of my time looking through the viewfinder and watching the waves, and a lot of it's down to timing. You would know yourself when you're trying to get sort of, you know, water trails, and I'm literally moving. I use back button focus, and I'm watching and I'm waiting and moving. And
well, that was another question with me: is what do you focus on?
Good point. Yeah.
No, because this is the ironic thing here is that, you know, a lot of people go, but you're just taking you're blurring the image. Therefore, why is it important to focus? Well, it's really important to focus, and I would always say you have to focus first. Find your composition, focus first, you know, and then move your camera. Otherwise, there's a very fine line, isn't there, in terms of you've just a blurred photo. So focus is really, really important. I generally, with a seascape, depending on the size of the waves, I'd either focus on the line of the wave or I'd focus on the horizon.
Yeah. And what makes a good ICM photograph, regards to what ingredients do you look for in the actual picture, regards to colour, what, you know, the ratio aspect, things like that? What makes a good picture?
Well, for me, colour's always a nice thing, but that doesn't have to be pink. And you know, I like those deep blues and you know, those real dark greys. I suppose the number one thing I look for is contrast. So I want clouds. I want that deep contrast. The clouds obviously then create the shadows on the foreground. I'm looking for, you know, retreating tides, wet sands that reflect the light, and I'm looking for those patterns. That's a good day for me.
Right, yeah.
Sure.
Pleasure. Guys, any other questions at all?
Not for me.
Silence.
I'm going to ask a ridiculous one. Right, if you had a preference, are you an inner tide person or an outer tide? Retreating or coming in for the wave? Because we all go for the out one because you get the streaks and stuff. But I've noticed there's a real kind of almost like an inward energy coming through and across.
Yeah, so well spotted, Louise. Well spotted. So I always say I wait towards me. It gives a smoother surface and it actually reflects the light a little bit better. mid-tide to low or high. Low tides can often have quite a dirty, muddy.
But the wave coming towards you when you're taking it.
Wave coming towards,
that's a re-education for me.
Through with Kim Grant, I've interviewed Kim before. She's a real lovely girl, and obviously you've got that whole photography community thing going on. A lot of people do respect your work, and also, of course, you've been in photography magazines like Outdoor Photography. I think there's a couple of more actually. We've got here. There's a list which I've got before me. You do galleries, and if so, I mean, what type of themes do you stick to, like beaches and things, or?
Well, I own a website, and I've got a couple of collections on my website at the moment, which is kind of more.
Yeah.
I've got my Echoes of Elizabeth collection, which is predominantly my Harris collection, and then I've got my sort of more simplistic seascapes.
Yeah, they're really nice images, and I think in a gallery they look really, really nice and minimal kind of approach. That's what people do like, is that minimal kind of photograph. And your actual ratio when you do your images, do you do a certain size, like 1:1 crop in camera, or do you just do it like any size?
No, I kind of try to not crop where I can, to be honest, and I do predominantly my work's mostly landscape as opposed to shooting portrait or.
Yeah, because I've noticed obviously the images are so, what I like about them is just escapism. When you look at the point where who's your biggest influences in ICM? I mean, I know there's a lot of.
It's having a moment.
Yeah,
it's having a moment.
Caught on.
It's getting very popular. My biggest influence, to be completely honest with you, is I guess I am very, very influenced by contemporary artists. I can name a she does incredible, beautiful seascapes, and she paints
as well, probably because of the primary colours and things you put in. It's really nice. So what we do now, guys, we're going to actually go into images, and we're going to share some images up on the screen, and obviously we'll go through these and we'll talk through the images Shona has been taking throughout the time doing it. It's that time, guys. It's that time.
It's time for that part of the show. On land, a look at the images for this week from.
Yeah. Okay. So soft.
Well, the colours of Harris, it's what draws me to the Outer Hebrides, to be honest. And this is a great example of what I look for and what I get really excited about. And this day was one of those days where you've got that really, really dark sky, but you have got the sunlight coming from behind you. So you're getting that illumination on the sea, on the sand, and you're just getting in the car. As I stood in the same place. And this is a great example, down the wellies are soaking wet, and it's dream conditions for me, really, really dream conditions. And this one was and trial and error. But this day in particular, I did get quite a few shots I was happy with, but I did spend hours there.
I like the fact what you mentioned about the going there with an ICM. It's something I don't think about too much, but an ICM, there's so much going on in the picture, but you can actually see the darkness of the clouds there, the mood of it draws you right into the back. And also you've got this nice separation of the warmth, the sand, the light hitting the sand and the waves. So lovely.
Thank you. I had a few days away with the camera, the husband and the dog. And this is a prime example of being in the right place at the right time with the watch around the corner. And it was quite grey. The light was quite soft and muted. And one of these sunsets that I kid you not, it probably lasted for about an hour. Everything was pink. The sand dunes was pink. The sea was pink. It was just surreal. And in conditions like that, I get almost kind of quite frantic and agitated. But I knew I had this opportunity to capture something really, really special. And this image here, quite slow shutter speed, 1.6 second, really, really slow movement. The positioning of the clouds was perfect because you've got those to pick up the texture, the detail of that water coming in. The tide was going up.
You can see why you try and pick that reflection in the sand, because it looks
it's
so
I mean,
well
it just
balanced.
illuminated
Yeah.
it did
And it's
illuminate.
definitely not over pink. I think it's perfect. Absolutely.
It is, yes.
Thank you,
Yeah.
thank you. It's very pink for me. My portfolio is generally much more pastel.
I've always struggled. Again, that scar was that real strong pink.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, the actual digital image looks fine, but I've tried to print it and it looks awful. And I'll put it all down to them pinks and blues. It's just it's almost as if it's oversaturated. It just doesn't quite work.
Yeah, it's challenging when you're dealing with this sort of level of color. It's definitely challenging.
Yeah. Are you working with
I like to be able to get results in camera. I like
coming in. It's almost imperceptible movement there. It's almost as if that area is frozen a little bit more than what you're seeing as it's going off into the distance.
My movement would have been very slow. As you can see, what I like to be able to capture is the breaking waves. So the waves started out really quite big when I got here, but obviously as the sun set and that tide was retreating, they were getting quite well, as you can see, they were getting smaller. But I still wanted that breaking detail. And for me, ICM, and this is the thing, that for me, ICM isn't about abstracting an image. It's not about that for me. I want to soften the edges. I want to create that painterly feel, but I still want a photograph that is relative to what I was seeing at that time, and maintaining that. So that's very important to me. It's softening those edges.
I mean, unlike landscape photography we do, and of course that's landscape photography also, but it's more of an art aspect in a sense that you're actually creating something with the camera, like these small movements when you move the camera slightly, or you give it a jolt, whatever, just to get that effect. So it's like a paintbrush you're using as your camera. So it's more for like fine art, isn't it? And it's in a sense of in photography. Would you say that?
Yeah.
Lovely image, that one. Great.
Yeah, you paint with your camera, don't you? You paint with
your
camera. Yeah.
It sounds cliche, but because I can't paint with a paintbrush.
Yeah, I remember I've been watching Bill Ward doing a lot of stuff as well, and I mean he's another influence. He does a lot of like the landscape photography of the year competition, one of the judges, and also of course he does ICM, and
a lot.
I've tried ICM, and I mean it's okay, but I'm not. I just, if I had the patience a bit more, I would like to try to get a bit better. But my first attempt wasn't really that great, actually. I was getting all these kind of like artifacts and images, etc. It just didn't look right. But that's a lovely shot there. Yeah, that's quite nice.
I love this. I love it.
Yeah. So you can tell we've all been looking at your work before. So, Shona, can you just give us a bit of an introduction to this shot? It's you can see the movement in this. It's a lovely shot.
Yeah, so this was another one of those days. And this was in Lewes. This was Cliff Beach. And Cliff Beach is renowned as probably one of the best surfers locations in Lewes. You've got the North Atlantic, you've got the wildness. And again, as you can see, we had really great conditions on this day. It was a high tide, which is always great when you're trying to capture bigger waves, because you can get closer to them, and generally speaking, when the tide's coming in and at high tide, you're going to get the real wildness of the waves. And again, the thing about Lewis and Harris is the color. You've got that beautiful clear water, and you get those aquas, especially when you've got that sort of grey sky. It really illuminates the aquas and the colors. This one brings back a specific memory. So I'm on the beach. There's a lot of swishery. We can see that, and that water's coming in fast. And the backwash of the water is almost quite dangerous, to be honest, because if you can sort of see the line where the waves breaking, that's where the beach goes down at a great big angle. So it's crashing on the sloping sand, and then the swishery is coming towards you. And I again spent a few hours watching, waiting, and taking shots. And And the danger of that when you're stood so close to the sea coming in, looking through your viewfinder, is you're not actually aware. So in this instant, I did have waterproof trousers on. They were over my wellies. I didn't get wet, but the water came up mid-thigh to me. Yeah. I was literally like, and at great force. And I was just like, okay, Shona, keep your feet still. Don't try and move. Stay still. Keep grounded. My camera's up here. And I'm like standing there just thinking, please, please. And I'm not worried about falling, even though I probably should be. I was worried about my camera. And that's the memory. When I see that, that's the memory that I get. It was pretty scary, to be honest. But again, this day, the skies, you've got the sun setting to the left of the scene here. And not so much in this one, but the sky was really, really orange. That horizon was very, very orange in some of my other shots from this day, with that brooding cloud. I mean, it was just absolutely beautiful. And what I love about scenes like this is when I'm behind that camera, I'm not thinking about anything else. And for someone like me who's tightly wound, as my husband would say, and quite frantic in my everyday life, this is just everything. Literally, you don't think about anything else. It's just wonderful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful shot. I love the straightness of the horizon. And obviously, almost everything's kind of really kind of striking there and straight, and just looking right across the horizon to it. It's really nice. So yeah, we'll have a look at the next shot, and so far it's been great. Yeah, tell me more about this shot, Shona.
This one is local to me. So this is Gullen in East Lothian, and this would be where I probably spend most of my time. A really, really beautiful beach. And it's just a really big bay, and it's not a particular beach that lots of photographers go to, because it is just sea, sand and sky, but I quite like that. This was actually winter solstice, so it was on the 21st of December that I took this, and it was, again, in East Lothian, we've got the North Sea. It's much calmer. We're practically here still in the Firth of Forth, with Fife in front of us, so it can be very, very calm. Never really get a lot of waves, but on this day there was a lovely fast moving water, which kind of gave that interest. And for me here, when you're working with such minimalism and you've got nothing in this image but sky, sea, and a little sliver of sand there, then for me, I'm looking for the patterns that the water's creating, and I'm looking for how the light's reacting with the surfaces. So for instance, you've got a beautiful, quite calm sea, and it's really, really picking up. And what I liked about this was just that the blue going into that sort of soft muted pink, and again reflecting on the sand there. So this was just really about waiting for the right moment and working with the elements and what they were giving you.
Bit inspirational looking at these images, actually. It's gives me food for thought trying this again. Lovely shot, that one too.
Again, this one absolutely blows me away.
Oh,
what I quite like about this as well, understatement, it's the different sides. You've got the darkness with the hill coming in there, and the opposite side there. It's kind of a juxtaposition, but also the swooshery going out. This is why I asked you about, do you prefer your waves receding or coming in? Because to me, that looks like more of a receding one in the foreground.
It might well be. I can see you've got the breaking wave here, which makes me think it's a bit of both. That was very fast moving. This is Scarista Beach in Harris. What was the beautiful, beautiful sunset, and the sun setting to the left of the scene. It was actually quite challenging conditions because it was very, very bright to the left of the scene. And when you're moving your camera through, as you said, Louise, you've got real darkness over on the other side. When you're moving your camera through such variable degrees of light, getting that balanced exposure becomes quite tricky. And what I tend to do here, and this always surprises people, is I move towards the sun as opposed to away from it. And this this is really important. If you look at the elements to the right-hand side, you've maintained that darkness. If I'd moved away from the sun, I would have brought that light right the way through. And potentially I might have then actually overexposed a little bit, or had a tendency to overexpose that horizon right the way through. So I tend to try and move towards the sun, but not let the sun enter the frame, which is what I've done here. Another tricky thing within this image as well, which I found quite challenging, was the clouds. So if you look at the clouds, they were beautiful clouds, but I'm not a cloud expert. I wish I was. But I like a thick, dense, heavy band of cloud, as opposed to lots of little fluffy clouds. And what can happen with ICM when you're moving is you can end up streaking the clouds. You've probably seen it before, where you get real skies, and I don't particularly like that. And I like to be able to maintain the form and the shape of big cloud. So again, my movement had to be quite small. And in situations like this, I can end up going backwards and forwards like that, to sort of maintain the cloud shape. And you'll notice some of the texture. So instead of big, long, sweeping movements, which just stretch the scene or pull the light, I tend to kind of just try and keep nice, soft backwards and forwards, which I believe I would have done here.
Beautiful. Yeah, I mean, that's a good point you mentioned about the clouds. Of course, for someone starting out in ICM, it's a good tip for people. So thanks for sharing that as well there. Yeah. We're going to go to the next one now. Yeah, just to give us a bit of...
Yes, this was Storm Babbitt, which was, I can't remember, was that last October, wasn't it?
Back in October, yes.
Yeah, and it was hit the east coast of Scotland like...
Yeah.
And to be honest, sadly, it's completely obliterated the beaches and the dunes on the east coast of Scotland. My local beaches, where you used to be able to just walk up into the dunes, now they've carved the dunes. The sea's just sort of carved them into almost cliff-like, so you can't get in and out. But this was Coldingham Bay. And this is in the Scottish borders, and this was on the Saturday, which was just probably as the storm was dying down, but the seas were still very, very rough. And as they say, that you always get the nicest sunset after a storm. So the sun was beginning to sort of set. I think we were probably about an hour away from sunset in this image. Yeah. And the waves at Coldingham, it can be quite a good beach for surfing, but you're probably talking 2 to 4 foot waves at best. These were 15 to 20 foot. I get a lot of people asking me lots of questions about how I do things, kind of behind the scenes, and I guess that's what I want to start doing with my own sort of social media. Good. Not as far as YouTube, but just a little bit more sort of interaction.
TikTok videos are good, and I think it just gives you a right insight into ICM photography, because you see out on the beach, etc.
I've had so many people not believe that my photos are handheld, though, and I'm like,
yeah, that is good. I mean, like, I've tried it, and it's like the flick of the wrist. There's was it different kind of things? There's the flick of the wrist this way, and of course there's what you do. Of course, you actually shadow the hills and things. But yeah, I'm going to give it another go. I never really give myself a good crack of the whip with it, but
I've got a suggestion, right? Take this as a woman that's had a non-alcoholic beverage tonight, and it's quite. Why don't we do a Shona P challenge, right?
Yeah.
And just Shona can just give us a little bit of feedback on it, that maybe just don't be too harsh. I don't want to cry.
Yeah,
I like.
However, because we're all very different kind of genres here, and it might be just worth a go. I mean, not next week, but maybe, I don't know. Maybe on the 12th of September, after I've met Shona in person. Just
oh, that's cheating. That's cheating.
Actually, you know what? I think we'll do that, and if Shona's okay to come back on, would you like to do that?
Oh, I'd love to. That's a great idea.
But Shona, get that smile fixed now, because you're going to be going like this. What on earth are they doing?
I just want to do it.
I always do say to people, though, I can't hide what I think of something.
Yeah,
you'll see it in my face. You will see it in my face. Yeah.
I'll be looking over this video tonight. Anyway, not at all. The thing is that sounds a great idea. What Louise says, we'll go out and we'll do a little challenge. I think we'll all go to the coast, guys. We'll just shoot around the local coast. Oh, wait a minute, you're in Birmingham, Steve, aren't you?
Well, have you got a canal?
Don't worry about that. Don't worry. I'll sort that out.
I'll
sort that out. I wish I'd have known 2 weeks ago when I was there, because down on I was on the Devon coast.
Lovely.
The wave formation was fantastic, and it's just like you described. And I'm just thinking, I wish we'd have done this 2 weeks ago, so I could have had a go. And again, the sky was superb for what you want. You know, you had that dark skies, but with that little bit of light, that little bit of warmth coming through. Fantastic crashing waves, that turquoise water. I'm gutted. I want to go back.
Same, Steve. I was in St Andrews on Sunday there. It would have been perfect, but no.
Yeah.
What we'll do is we'll set up a time, and what we'll do is we'll set up, give a bit. Obviously, it doesn't have to be straight away. It could be a month or whatever, or two. We'll do it, and once we'll get these images together, we'll get eventually around to taking these images. Then we'll contact Shona to come back on. How's that, guys?
Shona, you don't have to do any judging or anything like that. We could always just go. We've Shona Perkind. And kind of we could do it that way, and then
that's it. You're a verb now.
He doesn't have to. I love my verbs. I love my photography verbs. But but she doesn't have to actually kind of look at them.
Yeah. Oh, I'm happy to give some constructive feedback. Very happy to do that.
Yeah, that's good.
Excellent.
That's great. I've got a sofa to hide behind here, so that's okay. So, thank you, Shona, again for giving up your time to come on to our small channel. Hopefully, we get bigger in time. And thank you for sharing some cracking images, actually. Guys, Steve, Doug, and of course, Louise, thanks again as ever. You guys, you're a rock to this channel, you know that. And thanks for coming on tonight as well. Shona, would you come back onto the cast again?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Right. Thank you. We do like to say that sometimes to our guests as well, to come back on and just maybe sit in with a couple of other people we interview. Great. So thanks. And so guys, thanks again for watching another Landscape Lenscast. And we'll be back next Friday, of course. And I'm just trying to think the guest is going to be, or if it's actually, no, it's not a guest. It's a panelist, a new panelist we've got to come on for the night, one night only. I just wanted to show out as well. The other channel I used to be on called Clickcast, they guys moved on to their own thing because they interview artists as well as photographers and different genres of photography. They do a thing called Lens Lounge now. They're doing well, and I just want to show out to them. And just if you ever want to watch another podcast, these guys are on a Thursday evening at 6:30, I think it is. Guys, have a lovely night. And of course, Shona Perkins, thanks again for coming on. Really loved your work tonight. Guys, have a nice night. Take care.
Thank
All the best.